Thank you, Rich, for the great introduction. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all. Wow, this is a big stage. It's a big room. If I go back in time and tell my younger self that I'm going to be standing here giving a keynote, I'd probably laugh, maybe even cry a bit. Growing up, I was terrified of public speaking. And it took a lot of great mentors and a lot of practice, some great feedback from the mentors who gave me their time to essentially get me to overcome that fear. And in this session, I'm going to try to talk to you about some techniques, some strategies, and using generative AI to see if you can use that to upskill yourself. I'm Santhosh Srinivasan. I'm a senior cloud applications architect with AWS. And in this session, let's talk through what this massive generative AI technology can do to help us personally. So first of all, why do we need generative AI? Why do we need soft skills, right? Because when your AI systems can mimic human speech so well that it can talk to you colloquially, so eloquently, what are we going to gain from soft skills? That's something that could go in people's mind. But if you look at the research, a lot of your financial success, your personal success, your success in your career comes from your soft skills. And some research has shown, especially the one from Carnegie Institute of Technology, that 85% of that success relies on your soft skills. Only about 15% relies on your hard technical skills. Now, that could seem like an extreme number, but you have to think about the relationships, the connections that we make in our life, the human connections. Those are valuable, and a lot of our success is going to rely on that. Similarly, a different research by Deloitte suggested that 92% of the companies surveyed considered that their employees' soft skills, in some cases, are even more important and significant than hard skills. So how can we use AI effectively? We all know by now, because of all the massive buzz around generative AI, that they are great at talking like humans. They are very good at conversing like humans. So can we use this power to help us become better communicators and better leaders? That's what we're going to see. Before I jump into that, I want to talk about what generative AI is, like for people who may not have realized about it. Generative AI is powered by a lot of foundational models. These foundational models are trained in massive amounts of data, terabytes and terabytes of data. And this data could come from so many disparate data sources. And because these models are trained by this complex amounts of data, they are very good at articulating a lot of really good, important information. And these generative AI models can be applied across several industries. They are not specific to a single industry. So you can take a foundational model and have it further trained for additional industry-based specializations. Now, what are some of the key areas within soft skills where generative AI can help you? The first is creativity. These models are really good at helping you brainstorm various ideas. Like if you think about something, maybe you come up with a product, or maybe you're working on a promotion. Generative AI is great at being a partner to bounce around these ideas with. It helps you think of certain solutions and think of it from a different, diverse perspective. Then you have problem solving. If you are looking at a particular problem that you are in, you might be a customer-focused consultant. You might be working on a marketing campaign. So during these kind of situations, something that you could encounter in your day-to-day life, generative AI could be your partner where it can help you alleviate some of the complexities that comes with critical problem-solving techniques. So you could bounce around some solutions and then look at it from different angles to see what are the pros and cons of each of those, and then make a calculated decision. This was not something that was possible before. You would have to go to a human, you would have to go to a friend and talk to them about it. And sometimes if they are not going to be available, then we've all been in that scenarios, right? There's something due tomorrow, we need someone to bounce around ideas with, no one's available, what are you going to do? This would be a great way. And then communication. In general, being able to, whether it's your written communication or your verbal communication, or you're going to be presenting something, the ideas to get to, either to write the text or to be able to present something, generative AI, again, helps you generate those content. And we're going to see some of the techniques in a minute now. But this gives you an idea of what are all the various ways that you could use generative AI with. Now, most of the content here is based on my personal experience. As I mentioned before, I'm passionate about technology, but I'm also equally passionate about growing my soft skills. Soft skills, developing them, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes a lot of time and patience and practice. So in this session, I'm splitting it into 4 different types. So the first type of how we can use this is a technique based on role playing. In this technique, you would provide a persona to the generative AI model and have the model play that role for you. And you could interact with the model, essentially going through that situation and then honing your skills based on that. The second technique is personalized feedback and analysis. So in this case, you not only interact with the model, but you can also have the model analyze how you're interacting with it and then give you a feedback on what you did well or areas that you could improve. And then you have structured learning and practice. So based on the first 2 techniques, you could come up with a series of prompts, you could come up with a series of scenarios and situations that you could group under soft skills, and then use certain ideas that we're going to see shortly, like micro-learning and things of that nature, to be able to structure the content in a way where it's useful for you. And then lastly, we're going to talk about a little bit about retrieval augmented generation, AI agents, and how they can be effective and how we can utilize those components in our learning as well. So before I get into that, I want to talk about prompt chaining. Prompt chaining is a kind of prompting technique where you set up a series of inputs and provide that to the model. Now, the model is going to take all of those inputs, and it's going to get into that mode where it's going to play the role that you are establishing for that model. Now, it could be anything where you're giving the model to talk about either a consulting situation, or it could be where you're going to talk to a customer or maybe pitch a sales to someone. So you could have the model play the persona, and you could have interactions with the model. Now, to do that, you have to ensure that the prompt that you provide to the model makes sense to the model. We're going to look at how we're going to split the prompt into multiple components and use that so that the model is able to efficiently process that. Part of the prompt chaining is to make sure you use exit conditions to make sure when you conclude the interaction with the model. And you can also limit the type of exercise or activity based on some bounded parameters. So these could be parameters where you establish certain words that the model should not use, or not go into long-winded conversations about certain situations, so that the model is always within the bounds of what you establish. And then iterate and refine the data continuously, and use the results of your refinement until you get to the perfect situation. Now, we saw a little bit about role playing. So what I'm going to do next is going to play an audio for you where I set up a prompt chaining based prompt with an AI model to essentially where there is a customer that I'm going to be talking to. He's not too happy about how the situation is going on, and I want to make sure that I'm able to respond to him and mitigate the situation. So let's listen to that conversation first, and then we'll talk about how this worked.
Hello, Jim. Thanks for meeting with me today. I wanted to discuss the recent delays we've been experiencing with the project. We're now 2 weeks behind schedule, and I'm getting concerned about our timeline. What's going on?
Hey Joe, it's great to see you. First of all, I hear you, and I apologize for the delay. We've identified some new findings that was not apparent in discovery, which is causing us to change the data models. These changes have skewed the timelines slightly.
I appreciate you acknowledging the delay, Jim, but slightly seems like an understatement. 2 weeks is significant for us, and my team is getting anxious about the downstream impacts. What specific steps are you taking to get us back on track? We can't afford any more surprises.
I understand, Joe. Rest assured, we are ensuring that the updated solution will be flexible enough to accommodate variations from all third-party APIs. There won't be any more surprises.
Jim, I need more than just assurances. What's your concrete plan to make up for the lost time? My leadership team is asking for specifics, and no more surprises isn't going to cut it. Can you share what resources you're adding or what adjustments you're making into the timeline?
Absolutely. I can send you a detailed update on the discrepancy and the solution we are putting in place to address this in the future. I can send that to you before the end of the day today.
Look, Jim, while I appreciate that you'll send something later today, I'm sitting here right now needing answers. This isn't the first time we've had a "I'll send it later" response. Can we at least discuss the high-level recovery plan now?
Wow, I wouldn't want to be that person right now. But I know that a lot of people here can resonate with a situation like this, right? We go through this on a day-to-day basis. We try to be, especially people who work on customer-facing scenarios or on a customer-facing role, as much as we try, that could be, we could end up in a situation like that. This is a conversation that I had with the model based on the preset parameters that I provided as an input. And I will see how we can segment and structure the prompt to get to this kind of a situation. But I want to emphasize the significance of something like this, right? Because going forward, if I am going to get into very difficult conversations, I have a way where I can preview what could happen, and in a way, I can try to get ahead of that. I can set up that scenario that I'm expecting to get into, and then try out different conversational patterns and see what works. This will be a massive help for a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be just a difficult situation. You could use this in a variety of day-to-day cases. All right, so let's talk about the prompt that was used. The primary role that I gave the agent in this case is that the AI is going to be a training assistant for training a consultant in a software consulting firm. Now, in this case, the important thing about the prompt here is that I'm saying that there's going to be a software consulting firm and bounding the context of the model so that it can fill the various gaps that's going to be there. It knows that all the conversations that we're going to have is going to be relevant to the software industry. Then the secondary role is basically where I specify what kind of user persona, the model is supposed to take. Again, you don't have to write long-winded character profiles or personas like you're writing in a novel. Trust me, I know. I've often been stuck writing character personas when I go through writing my novel. But the great thing about the foundational models is that you just have to give it little hints, and it's fully capable of filling up the gaps and making a larger persona out of that. Then the human element comes in. So that from a training standpoint, you'd have to provide what kind of person is being trained and what is the situation that he is in. In this case, if you're the person who's going to do that, then write something about your own persona, where you are in terms of your skills, and then the model would try to accommodate based on your level of difficulty and where you are in your training program. And then in terms of the training parameters, you could set up a bunch of different parameters like the tone of the conversation, how aggressive you want the AI to take the role, and the number of words, for instance, because AIs generally have a tendency to get into long-winded responses. So you can limit that by saying how many words each response should be. And you can also specify various things like how many exchanges needs to happen, and also set up catchphrases. Like you could say, if the conversation ends up happening with certain words, then you'd have to react in a certain way. Now, taking that into the next level is where the personalized feedback and analysis comes in. So in terms of the feedback, AI is great at analyzing your text and then giving you specific actionable inputs that you can take to improve yourself. Now, there are three primary ways that I look at it. The targeted improvement, because you can specifically ask the model to assess you based on a specific skill. And objective assessment, where you can have the model not have any biases, because AI models, while there could be some bias from the training data, they don't usually have the inherent human biases. So you could get a very objective assessment, and you could also get actionable insights that you can use to improve yourself. So this is an example of the feedback that I got from my previous conversation that I had with the model. So if you look at it, the model has identified certain things that I did well in that conversation, and it has clearly identified a few things where I need to improve. And one of that is really interesting because it says that I missed an opportunity to talk about future mitigation strategies. Now, if you remember from the conversation that you listened, it was about how there was an unforeseen consequence that happened, and because of that, there was a delay. Now, usually when you get into these kind of situations, it's very important to get into the room with a concrete plan, and you should also make sure to have a conversation about how you are preemptively making sure that this will never happen again. And I missed that in that conversation, so the AI has given me great feedback that I can use in my next set of conversations. Now, these are some of the prompts that you can use as an example. For instance, you could have it based on a specific skill like we talked about. But my favorite is the feedback based on comparison. So this is where you could have multiple conversational paths or multiple iterations of the content that you worked out with the AI, and then have the model analyze each of that and then give you a comparative analysis between those various options. And the model's output would fascinate you because it'll give you perspectives that you may not even be thinking about, because normally when we get into these situations, we are only focused on the problem at hand, but not really about how the other person is going to perceive that when we talk to them about this. So that's another great way that you could use the model's output to improve yourself or get into a situation where you are handling the particular scenario better. All right. The last one in terms of the simple techniques is structured learning and practice, where we take the first two approaches, where we do a structured prompt using prompt chaining, and then ask the AI to analyze the feedback, and then put that both together into a module that we can effectively reuse over and over again. So there are, I categorize this into three main functions: the skill-specific modules, adaptive learning, and micro-learning. Skill-specific modules is where you can ask the AI model to assess what you have done up to now, and then give you an assessment of where you are weak. Like in terms of if you are doing well in terms of conflict resolution, but maybe not really good at negotiation skill, then the AI can tailor a certain set of scenarios for you. You don't even have to think about the situations at that point. You can ask the model to give you ideas on what kind of scenarios that you can use to practice those negotiation skills. The next is adaptive learning. So this is where you can use some prompts where you can indicate the model to adapt its own responses to where you are. So instead of starting high at a very advanced level and getting into like extremely complex situations, the model could start small. It could start with some very basic conversational patterns, and it doesn't even have to be just conversational patterns. It could be something about technical writing, for instance. A lot of us have to deliver technical documents in our day-to-day job. We could also be asked to do presentations and stuff like that. So that's another great technique to use for those kind of activities. And then finally, micro-learning is where you take up certain activities and then ask the model to break it down into bite-sized pieces. AI models are great at doing that. They can analyze a lot of content in a very short amount of time. So you can essentially take some content, throw it in, upload it into the model, and then ask it to give you a bite-sized portions of those lessons. So in order to apply it in practice, start with a skill that you identified that you need to get better at, then choose a model. A lot of these new generation LLM models are really great at all of these techniques that we just talked about. So you can choose one of those models, practice, get a feedback, and then iterate on it. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the advanced techniques with respect to the utilizing the AI to improve your skills. So the first of it is I want to talk about retrieval augmented generation. So far, everything that I've mentioned, it's you having a one-on-one conversation with the model and trying to get feedback and improve. But retrieval augmented generation is a concept where you can store some data and have the AI model use that data to augment its own responses. So instead of you just having a direct communication, now you can provide some context awareness to the model. And how you provide the context awareness is through historical data that you might have already used. So one of the things that we can do is take all the feedback that the model is providing us in our day-to-day interactions, store it in a data store, and then use that to provide that context awareness to the model. This way, it's not just going to be immediate feedback that the model is giving you, but it can analyze the path that you have traveled so far in your learning journey, where you started, where you are right now, what was all the feedback that was provided, and how you used those feedback to improve yourself. So the model can analyze all of this and then start tailoring the feedback, the further feedback that it provides to you based on those. So there are 4 different types, again, that I want to classify this in. The first one is the categorizing the modules using something like a UI, right? So you can have a user interface where you can modularize all of the categories that you've just come up with. Again, the models are great at doing that. You can use a prompt like generate a series of modules that I can use to improve my negotiation skills, something to that effect. And the model will give you a series of, a list of modules that you can store. Now for developers in the crowd, you could use a simple CLI script to do this, where you can interact with the model through an API and then have the script executed every time you want to. The next is the tools that you can integrate with. So the conversation that you listened to, it was just a foundational model. But I used a technique where I took the text that the model gave, passed it to a speech-to-text tool, and then the voice that, like when I spoke, I used a text-to-speech tool. So it's both ways, right, bidirectional, text-to-speech and speech-to-text. By doing this sort of integration, you could have a very natural conversation. You could, of course, there's nothing wrong in just typing a prompt into the model, but for more immersive learning experience, having these kind of integrations will help you be more immersed in that learning process. And then we spoke a little bit about RAG, and then finally the agents, the agentic workflows. So we are in 2025, we are getting into the next stage of the LLMs, which is the agentic era, where we are using, and a lot of companies are putting a lot of time and research into using agents, which are autonomous resources or programs that can further the cause of LLM. They can do, like instead of just being text-based interactions, these agents can do like real-world stuff. So we can also use the agentic workflows here, where instead of interacting with one model, you could set up multiple models, maybe in a group setting. So consider yourself, you are going to be pitching to a series of investors. There's going to be a bunch of different people involved. Now you can use the multi-agent workflows, where each agent can interact both with themselves and with you and create more complex scenarios that you can use for practice. Now, these takes a little bit more time. Some of these could take a little bit of programming effort as well, but the amount of immersive experience that you'll gain from these is really worth it. And then finally, I'm going to leave some thoughts for you to consider, because while the power of AI is really great to use for all of the stuff that we just talked about, there is still a possibility of bias in the data that was used to train the model. So be aware of that. There could also be issues relating to the lack of real-world context. What I mean by that is, most of the input that you provide is through text form. So there are things like facial expressions, body language, verbal cues even. The models are not taking these kind of things into account. So be aware of that and make sure that you are using it for the right skill to train yourself in the right skill using these approaches. And then over-reliance on AI feedback. While the feedback that the models are giving you is great, it's important not to take that as some sort of a concrete evidence. Use that as a guiding path, use that to improve yourself, but don't rely on it entirely. And then AI models are susceptible to hallucinations and inaccuracies, so be careful about some of the situations that you could put yourself into. But again, these are learning experiences, so as long as you are aware that the model can hallucinate, and if you detect during your course that there is a possibility of hallucination, make sure to be aware of it and then course correct. And then finally, none of this negates the importance of human connection. This is just a tool that we can use to further ourselves, but now more than ever, human connections, the relationships that we create, and all the friendships that we create in the world, that still plays a major role. So while the power of AI is great at helping you do all of this by yourself, don't forget that we are still all humans, and that connection, the importance of that connection is never going to go away. So I hope you all learned some of the things that you could do with generative AI-based models, and hope to take it with you. And thank you very much for your time and listening to this session.